And just as I pressed the button to make this all start, my radiator went donk like that, which it does. And little things like that, do you find if you suddenly hear little sounds from anywhere in the room that aren't normally there, it kind of puts you off?
What noise was it?
It's the radiator going donk.
Radiator, right? Yeah. It's funny
because distracted by little sounds.
My neighbour's dog. Well, the one side, their dogs are lovely. My dog just says hello to their dogs, and that's fine, and they stop. But the other neighbour, that dog will bark for hours. And then the other side, they've got work going on, but there's a little hole because I'm in a posh shed. Where the hole is, the air hole is probably a word for that. I don't know what it is.
Ventilation.
I can hear into their garden, so they're doing work in there. But I every so often I keep thinking, what's that noise? But it's because I can hear.
Oh, that would be so off-putting, especially if you're doing what I do, like write copy and stuff throughout the day. It's just like suddenly like.
It's only a little bit. It's only
abstract.
A little bit.
Yeah, but it would seep in. It's like I can't listen when I'm deep in the heart of writing. I can't listen to music that's got lyrics because I find myself writing lyrics and stuff into people's copy, which is not always that good.
Funny, isn't it? The whole what we like to listen to, because if I'm doing my work, I have to listen to very loud music, very loud in my earphones, but I can't listen to a podcast if I'm working because I can't do a whole podcast come and I wasn't listening to any of that, so I have to do that in the car. But I'll listen to the TV whilst I'm working, but I'll listen to most programs, not watch them.
And that goes the same for this one as a podcast as well. So if you're listening to this now whilst you're working and none of it is registering with you, that's fine. As long as you just say that you liked it afterwards, I don't really care.
Or put on in the car. That's always a good one.
Put us on in the car instead. That would be good. Talking about things to listen to and all of that. That's a good opportunity to bring in our guest today, who's the wonderful Fifi Mason, who's got the most wonderful jumper on today as well. So let's say hello to Fifi. Hi, Fifi.
Hi, guys.
How are you? I love that curtain, by the way, in the background. I have to describe that, but for people that are listening to this and not watching it, it's kind of a it's just literally a curtain of lights. It's just like
a curtain of lights, purple and teal. My favorite colors.
Yeah. Well,
what favorite colors?
Purple and teal.
Well, look, see, that's my logo color.
It's meant to be.
we've got teal as well. We love the old teal.
Yeah.
We've got teal and pink, which is I feel it's kind of half embracing my feminine side and half pink.
Well, you liked what I said about the pink, that you can come to my funeral now because you can wear it.
Yeah, I don't want to come to your funeral. Well, I would come to your funeral, but I really don't want to be discussing your funeral. You're far too young for that, etc. Fifi, it's been a while since I've spoken to you, but I think you were one of the first people when I reconnected with LinkedIn again that I contacted and I said hello to, and I loved your content. You talk a lot about being an introvert and that not being a problem. Is that fair to say? Tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah. So, I am a personal brand and visibility coach, and I specialize in working with quiet, more introverted business owners and specifically coaches. I talk a lot about introversion and how it's not a bad thing to be an introvert. It can actually be a strength. It can be something that we can really lean in on, and it appeals to different people. Being yourself, being authentic in your personality, it really works. So I think it's a great thing that we have all these diverse, different personalities, different approaches. And if you're more quiet and introverted, doesn't mean you can't be a successful business owner or coach or impact maker. Yeah.
Now, Marianne, you train people to train. You teach people how to teach. Do you find that introverts get on just as well on your course as extroverts? Or is there a sort of natural tendency when you're training as well? Is there a natural tendency for there to be an extrovert in the classroom and they be a bit of a disruptor to everybody else?
Do you know, I don't tend to, I very quickly, I just do suss people out. That's why I love doing it. I always tend to sort of, I can work out kind of what sort of people. I don't know if I like to categorize people like that, but because I give quite a lot of me, and I don't know if I'd say I'm an introvert or an extrovert. I think I'm just me, really. But what I tend to do though is, I've had people come up to me in the break before and said, if I don't look like I'm joining in, it's not because I'm not, it's just I'm really, really nervous. And I said, that's fine. I said, you're joining in, but you're joining in. So what I do as well, I try to get the delegates to then realize that when they're working with people, and that doesn't matter whether it's teaching or if it's life, really, but say I talk to somebody in break time and they give me an answer, what I tend to do then is I'll bring them in to the group. So I'll say, oh, somebody at break time gave me this answer. If I suss that they don't want to be identified, I'll just say somebody gave me a really good answer, or I'll say, oh, so-and-so told me. So what I've done is I've brought them in, but I've brought them in a way that they feel comfortable. I think that's really important. But also I think you can be a trainer without being loud. And I just say to people, just do you in the way that you do you best, because you can't, it'd be like doing stand-up with somebody else's material. Like you said, Fifi, you know, it's just encouraging people. I think in a world where everything seems very loud now, people think they've got loud and in your face, and you know, and you don't have to be. It's, you know, there's always going to be somebody that's going to want you for you being you, I think.
Yeah, I actually spoke to a musician yesterday who's just launching her pop career, and her name is Shy. And that is her pop name, Shy FLW. You can see the video out there now, and she picked that name because she is naturally quite an introvert. And we had a conversation about that because in that field, you know, it's kind of seen to get yourself out there. You seem to need to be an extrovert. You seem to need to kind of push people's buttons, etc. But
it can make it worse, can't it, for you?
Yeah, but I loved her approach to it. That, you know, there are people that need to see me being me and not necessarily being like that, because that will appeal to them as well.
Yeah.
And how have you seen the walls kind of tumble down or change, if you like, Fifi, in terms of the way that we perceive extroverts and introverts?
I think there's been a lot of work that's been done by some really great people in the space. So Susan Cain, for one, whose TED talk blew up, and then her book as well, just bringing this newer perspective of what introversion really means. And it's interesting you talk about the music industry, and it's true, there's a lot of more outgoing extroverted people that you see in that kind of space, and then those who are more introverted, quieter, often feel like, well, that's not for me because I don't see anyone like myself. But there are some. I'm a big fan of Christina Aguilera, and while she is a performer and she can turn it on and switch it on, she is very much an introvert in a lot of ways. It's quite obvious in her interviews and things. And really, it's understanding what introversion really means to you. And and what it means, or how it impacts you as well. So there's a lot of misconceptions around what introversion is in the first place. Does it mean that you're shy? Does it mean that you're socially anxious? And it's none of those things. What we have become, or what we've learned of introversion, what it's become now, what it's known as, is more around the energy side and how you need more time to yourself. You thrive in more solitary kind of environments, but not being on your own all the time, but more just being left to your own devices to be able to work through things at your own pace, in your own head, and not necessarily having to constantly be outward focused. It's more this inward focused approach. And whereas an extrovert might be more likely to talk out loud, talk their ideas out loud, an introvert is more likely to go away and think about things before they talk and speak. So there's the energy side and there's the way we think, and the energy is really around how we just need more time to ourselves to recharge and re-energize, and that kind of thing. So it's really understanding what it means to you, and know that it's not down to introvert. It's not down to shyness. It's shyness and extroversion. Shyness is like, and social anxiety is a different side of things.
In terms of that, do you see that in other areas as well? I mean, we've talked about sort of ADHD, etc. before. Now, do you see any of those kind of traits coming out in people that are neurodiverse?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, because I'd always seen myself as shy, but I kind of knew I wasn't really shy. So it's always, I was diagnosed a year and a half ago, 2.5, I can't even remember now, doesn't really matter. And so much has made sense for me. So I sort of lived this kind of like, well, I think I'm shy, but I'm not really shy because I'm okay with who I am. And so, but I think there's very much this thing that if people have got ADHD, they're loud, therefore they must be extroverts, which actually is not necessarily the case, because quite often I know some people don't like the phrase put a mask on, but putting that front on, let's call it a front, to sort of hide that. And yet I've got a friend who's, I would say, likely to be autistic, and he would come across to people, and to me actually, he approached me because he wasn't sure if he was and he wanted help, would come across as quite shy, quite quiet. And actually he says to me, but when I'm around you, I feel like I've got permission to be me. And he said, and actually, you know, you're he's quite outspoken, but in a very different way to me. He's quite outspoken, and he said, I can't tell people what I think because you get told off for it, which I thought was funny. And it's like you were saying though, Fifi, about that energy, and it's kind of like he said he gets that energy off me to sort of be. It's not even about being the same people. In fact, like he said, I can't keep my mouth shut sometimes, Marianne. I know I just open my mouth and I say it, which is funny because he's quieter. People would think that maybe I'd be the one that would speak up, but actually quite often I'm the one that will say, oh, probably shouldn't say that. So it's quite funny, isn't it? How I think being around different people, well, as you said, it's about what it means to you. And so really, mine isn't about, when I say to people, I'm not shy, they go, you're not shy. And I go, it's all to do with where I feel comfortable. When I don't feel comfortable somewhere and I don't feel welcome, and again, with my training, I try to do this, that if people feel welcome and comfortable, you'll get them, whatever them is.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, which is how much of this is, Fifi, dependent upon where we sit within ourselves and you know, how much we've kind of understood ourselves, but how much of it is to do with the audience that we put ourselves in front of, or the people that we put ourselves, or that we put around us?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, it's again taking them and making them separate from the even though introversion and extroversion, when we talk about that, we are talking about being around people, and it's all to do with people. But at the same time, it's so very different to the shyness, the social anxiety aspect, and seeing those separate. So someone who is introverted might be very conversational, might be very, very outgoing even. They might be. They just need to balance their energy in the right way, and do that, do the things that will help them to be switched on enough. So how I describe it for me is, if I was to go to a networking event, I have no social anxiety or shyness. I will go up to someone I've never met before, and I will talk to them, and I will have a conversation. But if there's more than one person, it gets more difficult to keep up with the conversation, because there's so much to process. There's so much going on around me. There is, and all of that is draining my energy. And the more the conversations go on, the more I'm like, I'm not going to be able to actually talk soon, because I can't actually comprehend what is going on quick enough to be able to keep up with the conversation. That's how it affects me. That's how it works for me. So it really is dependent on who the person is and how.
That's really interesting. But you see, people think that I would just go and speak to anyone, and I sort of weigh it up. And it is that sort of, like you said, about how much is going on there, and yeah, how much can you deal with, with all of that. That's interesting, isn't it? Because is it to do with the people? Is it to do with, I mean, I know my mum, she goes to Guild, and they actually, I think it's a brilliant idea. They have two people that are the people who are the welcoming people. So when you've got new people, they are the person that greets those people, and they sort of look after them. Because I don't think it matters necessarily, even if you're extrovert or introvert, because people think, oh, an extrovert would happily just go to something and they just go and speak to anyone. Would they necessarily? Because actually it's quite a daunting problem. And a lot of it is to do with other people making other people feel welcome. But then in groups, you've got people that are introvert and extrovert. So it's, yeah.
A lot of it does come down to confidence as well. That's another thing to consider. So you've got to break all these things away from each other, because they're so different, but they become confused because people assume and make assumptions around what an introvert is. They say someone who is introverted is quiet, shy, lacks confidence, all these misconceptions, when they're things that you can learn, and that's what we need to differentiate. We need to understand that just because you're more introverted and you thrive in those environments where you work by yourself, you're working in your inner mind rather than externally with other people, just because you thrive in that doesn't mean you can't do the other things. And all these other things that come up, the confidence side of things, the shyness, the social anxiety, they are things that you can work on and improve. You're not necessarily going to be able to change the introvert extrovert side of things. You can get a bit more used to being around people, but you've got to cope with it. You've got to deal with it, because it's something that is innate in you. Whereas being shy and socially anxious is something that you can work on and change through therapy, through working with someone on those things. They are things that you can change. And the confidence, again, is something that you can grow and develop over time as well. So
still a lot.
Conversation so helpful. Are you not?
I still think it's a lot to do with whether, I mean, again, Graham, you and I have had these conversations about whether whether one wants to change, because I think the world would assume, or society, let's just say, would assume that you'd want to change. You wouldn't want to be like that, because you want to be like everyone else. And you think, well, actually, I'm all right. And I've had a conversation just yesterday with you, Graham, about how other people, I think it was yesterday, how maybe other people need to look at themselves. So I say now, I find I'm not very good at deadline. Well, I'm not very good at getting back to people on things. So what I now say to people is, if you want the best from me, could you do this for me, please? So I find the whole introvert, extrovert, and all the negative connotations that come with people being introvert not very helpful, but the same as whether it's ADHD, that's, oh, you're loud, you're too sensitive. And I go, well, maybe you're insensitive actually, but I was just a bit too polite to say. Or, you know what I mean? There's a lot of connotations. And actually, if people we get back again to just respecting each other, it would just be a little bit more helpful, instead of people feeling that they've got to go and change themselves to fit around everybody else.
It is about understanding it yourself, and then helping those around you understand it. And within my relationships, just knowing all of these things has helped me drastically, because I can give you an example of a past partner who was more extroverted than me, and he would get upset when I wanted to go spend time on my own because he thought it was a slight on him. I didn't want to be around him, that kind of thing. But when I understood introversion myself and I was able to explain it to him, he was like, oh, well, that makes sense now. So when we understand ourselves, how it really shows up for us, we can then, like you say, put those boundaries in place, express it to those that are around us to help them see why we behave in certain ways.
That's really interesting.
So important. Do you know what? And it was probably around for forever, right? But like a couple of years ago, it seemed that suddenly another terminology appeared on the horizon with this, which was someone being an ambivert. And I suddenly thought, hurrah!
What's that?
This is, well, I presume it means it's a bit of both, right? But and I looked at that and I thought, that's perfect, brilliant. Suddenly this kind of maybe my thing, because I know there's a bit of me that likes to show off. I know that. I know, I do. There's a bit of me that likes to do that. But, and this may surprise both of you and anybody else listening, but through the whole of my school period, I was very, very shy. In fact, my school reports used to say, wish Graham would contribute more in class. Wish he would join in with discussions and whatever. I used to be terrified at school. I used to sit there and I think I know it, but I don't want to.
Yeah.
I don't want to show that whether I'm wrong or not. So I don't want to put up my hand. I didn't have the confidence to do that. And at the same time, I found myself doing things as I grew up, which brought out the other side of me, which was what to some people would seem as a more extroverted thing. I mean, when I was 14, I got in with a group of other lads. Hi, guys. And we formed a band, and I found myself singing in front of thousands of people, and I just loved it, because that was a bit of me. I could just do that and then retreat back into shyness. But over time, it made me more confident in different areas, and different things happened that made me more confident at being someone that can publicly speak, etc. And you then just find yourself throwing yourself into that. But as you say, and that's why it was fascinating hearing you say all of that. The bit about still wanting time to take yourself off from everybody else and be quiet on your own, that's never disappeared. That has never disappeared. I'm the one member of this family who would love nothing more sometimes of an evening just to sit and listen to music, whereas everybody else wants to be socially together watching TV and talking across the room.
Do you think they do though? Because I thought about this over Christmas, and I've often thought, I feel sometimes like you have this whole, as a mum, you have this sort of idea of how it should be kind of thing. And Tim works different shifts. I work in the garden at the moment, so I'm not in the house because wait for my computer. So I want to be in both because I want to be available for the kids. So I've got a 15-and-a-half-year-old who seems to spend most of his time in his bedroom, who then I've got an 11-year-old who I don't really know what he seems to like doing, boxing most of the time at the moment. And over Christmas, I was sort of hearing people saying they were doing family things. And then I thought, well, I really like respecting what my family, what they want to do. We quite like doing our own things. I quite like to watch what I like. I quite like doing my work. Samuel, so Graham, he's very much like you. He's very, quiet, but he plays drums and he plays a guitar. And you couldn't get much more, And he said, I love it now playing the guitar. He said, 'cause everyone can see me. And I went, what? I said, you're the child who, like, when we used to go to school things, he'd stand at the back. And I think, God, I can't even see you. So I wonder if sometimes parents feel, and I know I was guilty of it and I stopped, feeling like, why is my child not like all the others? I can't see him. And I'd say, why don't you go at the front? He said, I don't want to be at the front. That's why I'm here. And I remember hearing him say that, and I thought, you got to stop now. Just let him be him, find his way.
That is interesting. Yeah. Is there a pressure from parents to children to be more extroverted, Faithy?
I don't think it is as much anymore. It definitely was when I was younger, though. I think there was a lot more pressure in past generations that the quiet ones were always to worry about. Like there was something. So you've got those sayings like it's the quiet ones that what is it? The quiet ones that you have to watch out for, and things like that. It's all those little sayings from back in the day, and and some people still use them today, I suppose. But it's just the kind of that thing when you're at school where the ones that don't seem to get involved are seen as not being part of the team or contributing or not doing the work the right way, all the pressure of those things. And I think it was made out that if you didn't conform to that more outgoing extroverted way, that there was something wrong with you. But I do think things are changing a lot in that respect with a lot of the people doing the work like Susan Cain. And I do see it in people themselves where they're like you say, Marianne, that just questioning your way of approaching those things and being more critical around the way that you're doing things yourself. I think that's an important thing as well. That's a really good step.
I think schools need to, because I think as adults we do this, and I'm just sort of still battling with the education system with my eldest, and even though it'll be too late, I still won't give up. But I still see with teachers that whole, as you said, Graham, and I suppose I feel quite passionate about this because I train trainers and teachers. I don't train school teachers, but I think I probably could, or should I say, that quite often, Simon came back the other day and he said the teacher wasn't very happy with me because they kept putting me on the spot. And I said, we've had this conversation that you shouldn't hot seat question or something where they just pick them to answer a question. And he said, my mind just goes completely blank, which he's neurodiverse. I think with anybody it's going to. And it is that whole that you're not, and so often he used to get overlooked for things. He didn't get picked for things because he wouldn't speak up. And I've said so many times, can you just approach him and say to him, I think you'd be really good for this? Because if you say it, he'll do it. I said, but if you don't, which they never did, and he just missed so many chances because they said, but he should come to us and say, and I said, but he's not going to because that's not him. But you could make him feel part of something by you taking that ownership and be the leader to actually grab him verbally to say, you'd be really good. And he would. And I think we all should just take a bit more responsibility with each other.
Do you think part of the problem is that people look at people in too much of a two-dimensional way as well, because they don't necessarily see that people can be complex? Yeah. As I said, I was really shy when it came to classroom situation, and actually what you've just been talking about there really resonates with me, because at middle school, I went to 3 schools. At middle school, I know, posh, eh? I actually dropped 2 math sets. I was in the top set, but dropped down 2 sets, and it was purely because I had a teacher that bullied. And I'm going to use that word because I personally feel that's what it was, right? And they did exactly that. They always, like, you know, well, they actually did throw things as well, but they would point at you and say, what's, you know, 63 times 5.8? And I'd go, no idea. And you go pale white, and all of the blood would run from your body. And someone else would be sitting there like, oh, I know. And it makes you lose confidence. And yet I'd get those things on my report about, you know, we know that he can do this, but he's not doing it. Because in other areas, like sport at the time, and I was sporty, I was captain of the rugby team. I could lead a rugby team out. I could shout and scream at people, and, you know, whatever on a rugby pitch.
What you'll find there, though, is that it's and I focus a lot about this, the psychological side of it. You'll enjoy the things generally that you feel that you belong. It's not just about being good at it, because actually Samuel really wasn't great at maths, and he's not. But when he was at primary school, he had a teacher that was absolutely amazing, and he said, I absolutely love maths. He had every reason to really dislike it because he struggled with it, like really, as in num dyscalculia struggled. But actually, because that teacher made it fun, exciting, he felt motivated to want to learn. And so he said, I know I'm not very good, but I really love it. And he got the best improved student. And that's just a perfect example that when you, like you said, if you don't want to speak up in class, so with history, Samuel's like one of the best, and they've moved him. So they phoned me and said, can we move him down? And I said, yes, he wants to be moved down because the teacher is going too fast. And he said, I just take longer to process everything, and they just keep skipping on. How bad that a child has to be seen as bad, wrong, not very good, when the teacher should really be. And I say this as a teacher myself, but somebody that trains them. Stop blaming the students, however old they are, and actually look at the way you do it.
I can really resonate with a lot of this as well. I think, well, there's 2 things I want to talk about, because I was painfully shy when I was at school, like so much so that I couldn't walk down a street without blushing because I'd be embarrassed. It was awful for a few years. And yeah, some of those examples shared, like being put on the spot in the classroom and all of those things. And I think there's a huge lack of confidence training in teaching children how to be confident. I think that's a huge thing that could be done. But I do think a lot of what we're talking about here ties into what I talk about a lot, which is self-silencing, and how it all of these experiences in our childhood and our past actually affect us to a degree now, to holding back from sharing our thoughts, our ideas, our opinions, because we've had those experiences, we've had those past experiences where we've been dismissed or told we're not doing things right, or have an experience where one just comes to mind where before I wouldn't even say I was shy when I was little. I loved to sing. I've always loved to sing. And I was probably like 6 or 7, and I was in the choir. I think it was just the school choir. And on this one day, I was there singing in the choir. We were all singing, and I got told to be quiet for some reason. but I didn't know why. It was not explained to me. And I just felt this shame for it, like complete shame, because I was told not to sing while everyone else was singing around me, and it was not explained to me why I should stop. And so I didn't sing for the rest of that session. And I was like, I'm just not going to go back now because I was told not to sing. And so that stuck with me for a long, long time. And I reflected back on it recently when I was thinking about how some of the self-silencing struggles that I've had manifested. And I think that was one of those situations. And I think that affected me quite drastically. So yeah,
that's terrible. It's amazing though, isn't it? How and even if somebody's, that's what I love about America. I lived over there when I was 18, and what I really loved was they just embraced. It didn't matter. I mean, I was very lucky. The school I went to, it was quite small, and so everybody had a go. I went on the golf team, for goodness sake. I mean, I'd never done it before, but I had a go, and it was great because I just love their whole good job. And it's like, it doesn't matter. There is that side of it where they are competitive, but I do like that other side of it, because for me, I've talked to people about this before, and it's interesting you said about that singing bit, that I did gymnastics when I was younger, and was pretty good at it. And it would be embarrassing because you would be in the newspaper, which no teenage girl really kind of wants that going on. But anyway, somebody at school said to me that they'd seen me in the paper, and they said to one of my teachers, she's a real big head, isn't she? And I'm not. Anybody that knows me knows I'm really not at all. And the teacher said, yes, she is. And I still know, and I was talking about this to someone the other day, that to this day, I think that's why I really struggle. When anybody compliments me, I just can't cope with it, because to me, if I say, thank you very much, in my mind, they're thinking, God, she's a show off, isn't she? So I just shut it down completely. And that's, you know, I'm 47.
And that's where it comes from, because you've done that with me.
Yeah.
Oh, my word.
It's from
that. It does show you, doesn't it?
If I ditched it by then, I just can't help but I just keep remembering that. And it's ridiculous that was one incident, but it must be, because, you know me, I'm not somebody who, I really struggle when someone compliments me. And you just, that's what I do when I do the teacher training. I really try to get people to go back to their childhood, to really feel how they feel. Because I say to them, when you're training people, it doesn't matter whether they're 20, 60, however old they are, we all bring that luggage in with us. And being somebody that works with someone, so like whether you, Fifi, when you're coaching, or whether it's what you do, Graham, when you're interviewing people, if you can just be a little bit aware and just really tune in, it really helps then to get the best out of those people. And so, yeah, for me, I get them to look and say, you know, think back to what it was like for you. And honestly, the people I've had, George, I love George. You know, I got him to think back to his childhood, that he, at school, teachers had bets on who was going to end up in prison in his class. I mean, what the heck? And he said, yeah, I did end up in prison. And I don't know how old George is now, so I'm not going to say, but he's older than me. And he said to me that I was the first person that ever believed in him. And he's older than me. I think he's older than 50. But for me, that was just incredible, that he's been all his life. And he said, I was the first person that believed in him. And he said, it's because you saw me. And I think if people did that, it wouldn't really matter what label you have of whatever. And like you said, Fifi, it's about, even if it's people learning to manage themselves, to know how to be around people. Do you see what I mean? So even if it is that thing with teachers saying people should be confident, no, be confident in your own skin. I think that's what it should be, because if you try and be confident, it's going to be an act, isn't it? If you're going to be that extrovert confidence, it's not going to.
Yeah, that's another interesting one. There's the fake confidence of just putting on a show, and then there's the you actually fully believe in yourself. It's interesting. It's an interesting perspective, though, what you were talking about there. So, because what I'm thinking about when I talk about self-silencing, one of the core reasons you might self-silence is taking on the responsibility of other people's feelings. But what you were talking about is also being considerate of other people's feelings. So there's the two sides of those things. And I think a lot of the time we have to let go of feeling like we're responsible, but also be sure that we are being considerate in the way we approach things and the way we being aware of that people are complex, as Graham said, that people have more to them than just what we see in the 2D version of generalizing people. Yeah,
it's interesting you said that, because I'd carried that around for many years, not as a victim or anything, but somebody said something to me the other day about me not accepting or needing to be complimented, and I thought, oh, is that how it comes across? And I said, and I went away and thought about it, and I thought, oh dear. And actually, I had a conversation with this person, and I said, it's about affirmation. That's what I need, is affirmation, because of also working in the education sector and being put down. And actually, I thought, no, I need to do something about this. I feel that I do, because I feel like it's giving a version of me to people that isn't really me. So that was quite a, but it was because I listened and I actually communicated with this person, and then we had this sort of quite frank conversation about it. And I thought, oh, God, I'm coming across as something I'm absolutely not. That I don't want praise as such in terms of like, oh, give me praise. It was affirmation. It was affirmation is what it was.
The validation of doing that, you're doing the right things, and that also ties into people pleasing as well. So
well, talking about that, I mean, that's one of the things that I like to sort of talk about, but also play with on a day-to-day basis on social media. And I'd just like to kind of end today's conversation, just bring it around to social media, because we're on social media, which is that social media is a strange place for all of us. And I just feel like one of the biggest problems out there is that we probably make a lot of assumptions about ourselves when we enter a digital space in terms of the way that we're going to be perceived. But I also think we make a lot of assumptions about how information will be received by other people. And I talk so much about this because I think we put stuff out there so often. I think we put stuff out there with at the back of our heads our agenda and our perspective on something, and assume that other people think and feel or will respond to it the same way we do, and they don't. How much of what you talk about with people is just about understanding the difference? Because actually understanding the difference between each other and getting into the right space mentally to deal with that is fundamentally the important part of all of this, isn't it?
So social media has drastically changed a lot of things in our world, of course, but when it comes to sharing your ideas, your opinions, and that kind of thing, I think you have to go in with, well, what I think the major struggle for a lot of people is firstly the self-silencing aspect, where they're holding back because of perceived or potential consequences of things. So it's that perception that you were talking about, that they think that something worse is going to happen a lot of the time. But then you do get the flip side, what you're kind of mentioning here, where it's like that those who are not struggling with that, potentially they're putting something out there, but they're expecting something different to what they're getting back. So I think there's two sides to it for sure. So there's the holding back and worrying that people are going to react in a certain way when it's a lot of it's just in your head. And then there's the putting stuff out there and expecting one thing and getting another. And I think the way of approaching it is, well, depending on the challenge that you're facing, it just depends. That will depend on the approach you take. For those who are getting a different response, one of my main approaches to social media is what I call an experimental mentality or methodology, and it's just approaching things as an experiment and seeing what works, and taking this more analytical approach to it and not taking it personally, but within that being aware of what you are responsible for. And what you are responsible for is the delivery, the tone, the content, and being respectful and having empathy, and doing your research as well. So if you're going to put something out there that you really feel strongly about, do your research and know that you're going to be sharing it in the right way with all the facts that you want to actually get across your point of view. So for those, another one of the core reasons we self-silence could be that we fear, or the fear of someone questioning you or having to defend your ideas. And so you just don't post anything in the first place because you don't want to have that confrontation. But the flip side is, once you start putting it out there, when you are ready to share those things, then you have to be prepared to back up what you're going to say. So yeah, there's two sides to it all.
Can I ask you something, Fifi? Do people that would see themselves, as I say, as introverted, would they find it can it be easier for them to express themselves on social media, in that they can sort of, I don't mean necessarily being seen like this social media, but in the written sense, let's just say, to be able to express themselves? Because quite often I've got a friend who struggles, and actually quite a few men that I know will say that they struggle to put into words what they want to say. So I've got a particular friend that tends to do it, would send music, and he'd say that would explain, because he struggled with the word side of it. Do people often find it easier to do it, to be themselves, let's just say, by being able to do it in their social media posts or something like that?
I don't know necessarily. I do find a lot of introverts and quieter people are just more reserved, more private anyway. So just being out, the idea of being out there on social media is massive. That's just a huge thing. So it's not necessarily that. I think where the strength comes from is that being put on the spot and having to talk out loud is more difficult. That becomes more a challenge. So when someone's got time to think, to write down their ideas, that's when you can get across exactly what you want to express in a much easier way. And that's why blogging and writing, anything to do with that, might be more up their street, more something that they'd be interested in doing. And posting on social media can then, especially text-based stuff, can definitely be a way of expressing themselves quite easily.
I have to say, I often see better written content coming from introverts rather than extroverts, because extroverts will tend to just go, and this is not a blanket category by any chance, because again, that's making assumptions, but there's a lot of people that will just go confidently from throw it out because they're confident in anything that they throw out.
They won't read the room.
Yeah. Whereas actually somebody that realizes that what they say will be taken seriously and needs to, and because they have an appreciation of that themselves, may then put more into creating something that has more depth to it in the first place, to put it out there, because it can be a great skill, I think, in terms of understanding the audience a little bit better. So horses for courses, we see both on social media.
I think a lot of people that
sorry, what was that?
I think a lot of people that are, can you hear me? I don't know if the signal, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. I think a lot of people that are introverted, I find it a little bit warped sense of humor here, that a bit like you said, you know, it's the ones that the quieter ones you've got to watch out for, because quite often people would see me as quite confident, but I don't tend to like to sort of promote myself as in explicitly. I just do what I do, and if someone likes it, then they like it. But quite often I've had people say, "Oh, you surprised me there. I didn't know you knew that," or, you know, and I thought, and I had it where I used to work, because I was quite probably introverted there, because it didn't make me feel welcome. And someone said, "I didn't know that about you." And I said, "Well, you didn't actually ask, and you never gave me a chance to tell you." And that was because it was one of those things that they saw me as one thing, but they only saw what they wanted to see. And I really told them it was their fault because they didn't give me a chance. So it's quite nice, though, when you can be a bit like, you know, you can surprise people. So like you said, it's the quiet ones you've got to be wary of. Yeah.
But in a good way.
I think the better way of approach of seeing that phrase is that it's not necessarily the quiet ones you have to watch out for, but in that context, it's more that they can be surprising, and that you just never know what is going on, because they keep their cards to themselves a lot more. The unexpected could happen.
Well, they pick the right time. Sometimes for some people, I have to wait for the right time in certain situations to sort of to know that I feel safe then, because I'm sussing out who knows what kind of thing, and then I'll sort of I can feel myself, my heart beating faster when I get to the point I'm like, it's nearly there. Now I can go and speak. But up till that point, even when I lived in the States, people say, "Oh, you're really quiet and a snobby." That's the other thing. Introverted people often get told that they're snobby or look down at people, which is an interesting one.
But that's a podcast for another day.
Yeah.
Fifi, thank you so much for coming on. We have our title for this episode, which is it's the quiet ones who are surprising, or who will surprise you. That's going to be the title when this goes out. Thank you so much for coming on. That was really incredibly interesting conversation. I hope you found it interesting too. If you'd like to carry on the conversation, exactly. Do exactly that. If you'd like to carry on the conversation, please do link in with Fifi on LinkedIn. Make contact. Ask her a question. I'm sure she'll be happy to respond to you and take it further. But it's been brilliant meeting up with you again. Thank you so much for that. And I can confer that she is brilliant at singing. With your little ukulele, or are you guitar as well?
Wow.
No, just the ukulele every now and then.
Yes, fantastic. So do check out Fifi on social media and connect with her. We'll be back same time, same place next week with another one of these, A Better Way of Life. We're trying to start conversations which make you think a little bit. I hope we're achieving that. If it's making you ask questions yourself, do get in touch with your questions. If you'd like to come on and tell your story, do get in touch as well. Until the same time next week, bye for now.
Bye.